What a dumbass. I'm talking about myself because I forgot that I live in the Midwest and I set up the stream to start at 7:15 because I've got my East Coast pals that it is after 7 for them now, but for me it's almost 6:30. What a dipshit. So tonight we're talking about you subscribing and liking the page, the Horror Syndicate on YouTube or the Horror Syndicate on Facebook. And to all of our new subscribers who are going to watch this, hopefully, and all of our new followers, thank you for joining us. We're glad you're here. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Universal Frankenstein films that started in 1931 with Frankenstein, continue with The Bride of Frankenstein, which some say maybe the best of the bunch. My favorite is Son of Frankenstein from 1939, and then we get into Ghost of Frankenstein. Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, or the Wolfman meets the Frankenstein, something. I think it's yeah. Anyway, and the House of Frankenstein, and there's like seven of them. Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, and with each movie, I do think the quality kind of fades a little bit. And one of them, actually, two of them feel like they're more direct sequels to the Wolfman. And we already did the Wolfman like 1,000 years ago, so we're not going to talk about the Wolfman. But we also want to hear from you if you have a favorite from the series. Like, I think between Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, those are the definitive two. And I really care or have a lot of love for the Son of Frankenstein. But I want to know which of the Universal horror Frankenstein films you like the best. Let us know in the comments. It'll come up on the screen, and we're gonna introduce. Well, not we're. I'm gonna introduce the crew tonight. We've got Shit Earl. That's Ted Hollister still. Seth Rooney. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
It's funny. I go back and watch the stream, and I forget that I call you Seth Aruni or Sethi or whatever. And I watched. I was like, I called him that. I'm gonna remember today, though. Anyway, and then we've got Boris Karloff, hair milliner. How you doing there,
Hey,
Nate? That's
I'm
a
good.
so Nate bought that as a Tots Trick or Treat Studios uh, monster mask, and he did a paint job on it, and looks shit. Looks like
Looks like shit.
no, it looks pretty good. I got a bad text, so no big deal. Hold on. Anyway, so how you guys doing tonight? Glad to see you, Jared. Hopefully, will be joining very soon. I think there's a monster in my closet.
The Twinkies.
I keep hearing something coming from over there. Probably a fucking mouse. Anyway, we have mice problems in these parts. So anyway, so the Frankenstein movies. Probably as much as I like the Dracula film from 1931, and I think these are probably the finest of all of the movies. A lot of it has to do with James Whale's direction. Um, he, I'm not sure about other films, but based on Frankenstein from 31, where we talked about. Now, I love Dracula, but I'm going to rag on it for a minute. Where Dracula looked more like a stage play, where Whale was able to make Frankenstein look more cinematic with the camera moving a little bit, and his director of cinematography was great versus Dracula, and I believe Bride of Frankenstein had something like the score was so much more cinematic than anything that had come before it, and it just James Whale is the X factor here. I mean, we got a great cast with Colin Clive, and Boris Karloff, of course, or question mark, you know.
Hmm.
And then of course in the second movie we've got I can't remember his name. Septimus something. It's no, that's the Pretorius. He was fantastic.
Pretorius.
Pretorius
Yeah.
is one of my favorite characters in the series. And then of course we've got Son of Frankenstein. That's got, in my opinion, the best cast with Karloff, Basil Rathbone, Atwell, and then Bela Lugosi. And of course Lugosi steals the fucking show in that one. So anyway, let's get into it. I figure those are the three that we'll spend a lot of time on, and then there's the other ones, of course, Ghost of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, House of this, House of that. So uh, it really started to like the quality of these started to kind of go downhill. Like and Frankenstein's monster was barely in the last couple, and then like I said, and even Seth has agreed with me, where the last couple almost work more as a Wolfman, like the one with Karloff, not as the monster. Glenn Strange was the monster, but Karloff was the doctor or whatever. That one, the monster's barely even in. So anyway, did you guys get? I know Seth, you've seen these multiple times. Nate, these aren't movies you visit very often, so I kind of want to hear impressions from you on the series as a whole before we start getting into the single movies, if you don't mind.
Yeah, as a whole, you're right. It's the best of the Universal monster movies. Frankenstein movies just have a prestige to them. Even though Well did Invisible Man, which is an excellent film, and The Old Dark House, which is probably my favorite. He did 2 Frankenstein films, so James really. Last night I watched, because I thought, why haven't I ever watched any of James's other films? Because I've just seen the 4 horror films. He only did 4 horror films. But before he did Frankenstein, he did 3 other films, and he was known for making World War I dramas. He had come from theater. That's what's funny about his movie being more cinematic than Todd Browning, because I think Todd Browning had been making movies a whole lot longer than James Well had a whole lot more experience. And James is coming straight from the theater, and he made a film that he had done on stage. He had directed on stage, and Colin Clive starred in it. I guess he worked with Colin on stage in England. I'm forgetting the title of that one, but it was his first. Then Howard Hughes saw his work and hired him to do film scenes for his World War I movie, Hell's Angels. And then he made a movie called, I think it was his first movie with Universal, maybe, called Waterloo Bridge, which I watched last night. It's on YouTube.
I saw you put something up about that.
And I wanted to see it because I wanted to see something that he did prior to Frankenstein. And it also starred Mae Clark, who plays Elizabeth in Frankenstein, and she is fantastic in that movie. And Betty Davis is in it. She has a small part. It's her 3rd movie. But Mae Clark blew me away, but also Well. Like Waterloo Bridge it plays like a play. It looks like it's a stage play. I mean, it's a lot of talking scenes between Mae. It's a kind of a love story. And, but the camera movements, the visual storytelling is there. Like this guy was kind of hitting home runs from the get-go as a visual storyteller. And that's the difference you see in Frankenstein compared to Dracula. When you watch Frankenstein, the editing, the flow, the camera movement, the actors blocking, all of this stuff is light years better than Dracula is in its structure and its execution. It's wild that they were made like 11 months apart. Like it just goes to show you, how talented James Well was. And Frankenstein, to me, I prefer that story to Dracula. I think the Mary Shelley story, I guess we could start there from the beginning with Mary Shelley. She invented the science fiction story. She invented the horror story. In fact, I found out that I think it wasn't until 1934 that the horror genre in film even existed. Like they didn't call them horror films until 1934, 1935. So the Universal horror thing wasn't even the coin on it until almost Bride of Frankenstein came out. But Mary Shelley's story is just so interesting and exciting because of the question of playing God and responsibility of creation. And I'm really into Frankenstein right now too, because I was involved in a stage play that's going on right now. And that one really plays heavily into fatherhood, creation, the artist, the creator and our responsibilities. And Frankenstein. I mean, the film is very different from the book, of course.
Yeah.
But the theme there of what Dr. Frankenstein is attempting to do is really crazy. Does anybody want to do you think we should start with the novel or
With the what?
with the book and the story, like Mary Shelley's book?
Yeah, that's. I've never read it, but I mean, if you guys know it well enough, feel free. I'm. Go ahead.
I'll let Seth. I've been talking for about 3 minutes. Seth, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's. I mean, the movie is pretty different from it, and I think they kind of course corrected when they made Bride, because they kind of brought back they brought in a lot of the elements that were left out of the book. You know, I don't know what to say about the book. It's really good, and it's really the monster definitely speaks in the book. Like he learns from like this family that he's been like sort of observing, and he basically kind of like plots his revenge, basically, and he kills Victor's younger brother, and he frames like the maid for it, or one of the maids for it, and you know, it's pretty tragic. And then he wants, you know, Victor to make him a mate, and yeah.
Well, the Kenneth Branagh film is probably closer to what the book is. I would assume Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little different still, but it's much closer.
Yeah.
Because as Seth said, the monster does actually murder on purpose and plots and revenges and does become a monster in the. I mean, he does in the movies in some way, but he does.
He's more misunderstood.
It's more misunderstood. He doesn't realize he's doing it, or it's just
right.
Rage or fear. But the Frankenstein monster in the book is educated, becomes very aware of mankind and how mankind treats one another, and knows what he's doing when he murders people. He knows it's premeditated, or he does say, "I'm going to revenge," you know, but just talking about the story, the way it was created, Mary Shelley had married Percy Shelley, who was a famous poet, and they had a really interesting relationship. I think a lot of them were bisexual. There was a lot of sex, and they were really into like Galvanism and alchemy. They were reading about this stuff and talking about this stuff. So that's where it was kind of in her head. And they used to hang out with Lord Byron, who was a poet, and the three of them would hang out. And basically, they were hanging out on a bad night where the weather was bad, and they were reading books or French magazines or like about ghost stories. And Byron or Shelley challenged them to come up with this best scary story. And Mary really had a hard time. She was like 19 years old at the time. She was having a hard time coming up with a story. And then one night she had a kind of like what they call it, a waking nightmare or waking vision of this thing. And then she came up with Frankenstein and won the competition. And, you know, the rest is history. And again, invented science fiction and horror with this novel in the early 1800s. And you know, it became a play, as like most of them do. But James Well, apparently, after he did that movie Waterloo Bridge that I mentioned, Universal said, "What do you want to do next? Pick anything," and he picked Frankenstein. And they were already trying to make Frankenstein. Of course, I can't remember the guy's name. He was the one that made the Murders in the Rue Morgue, which I watched last night, with Bela Lugosi as the monster. But Bela turned it down. He didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
So James Well came in and, you know, tackled it marvelously. And, you know, you jump into more about the film.
The film, when you're talking about the novel, which again I haven't read, the film really paints the creature, the monster, as a more sympathetic character than somebody plotting for revenge, because you don't ever get that in the movie, any of the movies, really. I guess. I mean, at some point he wants to get, or well, no, Igor puts his brain inside his body, but yeah, this first movie really, Colin Clive is the standout for me in the story of creating life, or is really interesting, and I love his role in the movie and the way he plays it so well. And I'm always going to talk about the way things look around them, and that set that they have for the laboratory is out of control. One of the best things, especially for its time. Which you guys had to know I was going to mention that because I love set design.
Those sets are incredible.
Yeah, the set is incredible. I talk about in Dracula the set of the castle at the beginning of the movie, but this has got to be the best set of anything in any of the movies. It looks so great, and like I watch it and I look at the set and I wonder what everything does, But I don't know. I like Karloff as the monster. He's not that much bigger than anybody else, but they put those boots on him and he's very hulking looking, And I don't know.
Like,
good movie.
Yeah. So you got something. I saw Jared can't get a link.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. I don't know if you saw Jared's message. He's just going to scroll.
My phone is.
If Jared's watching, just scroll up a little bit in the chat.
Colin Clive. I've always wondered why he's not mentioned more, because he is incredible as Dr. Frankenstein. His energy, his commitment. You feel when he delivers those lines, he's saying them with sincerity and, and what I like in the play that we're doing, like the father in the movie, his father's kind of, old and doesn't seem to be aware of things kind of, but in the play we're doing, I can't remember if he's like that in the book. He's just a very aristocratic, very intelligent. Victor looked up to Victor in the book. They called him Henry in the movie because apparently the studio thought Victor was too dark or aggressive of a name. Apparently,
yeah, they just switched the names between him and his friend.
Yeah, but a lot of maybe Victor's or Henry's ambition was to prove to his father what he's accomplished, and it's almost a son trying to get a father's approval, or I've done great things, and you don't see that too much in the film because again, the father character is kind of just seems like an old senile man who isn't aware of what's going on around them, or just very out of it. I do love that Elizabeth is very present. May Clark in the film is very present in Henry's life, mm-hmm. and very opinionated and trying to take care of him, trying to
is that Indigo?
Yeah.
But Collins, yeah, like when they come to when he's about to do the experiment and they come in and he's like, crazy, am I? We'll see if I'm crazy or not, and he goes in there and does all these great lines and these great deliveries. He's scary. Mm-hmm. He's so manic. And when the creature comes to life, and the whole classic, it's alive in the name of God, and he says, and apparently this line was cut out of the movie for 50 years, where he says, now I know what it feels like to be God or be God.
That's such a great line too.
Yeah. It's so important to the film.
Yeah.
There were a few things that were cut out of the film. That was cut out of the film.
I can understand for the time why that how it feels to be God, it was cut out, but
yeah, like even in Bride, where Pretorius talks about your Bible stories, there's a lot of stuff that I'm sure was not popular in a Christian America,
especially in the 30s, yeah.
And but because they were in, I mean, this is science. This is a science film, and science goes against that. And they were Mary Shelley was, I guess they were into Darwinism and all that stuff. So it plays into that, another thing that was cut out, which actually backfires in many ways, the little girl being thrown into the water. I didn't realize that scene had been cut out of the movie until 1986. It cut away before he throws her in the water. It would cut, and they said it actually had the worst effects because when he throws her in the water, you see he doesn't understand. He thought she would float. He goes, he's lost. Like
throwing the flowers in the water, and
he doesn't do it maliciously. It does.
No.
It's like he doesn't understand because he's a child.
Yeah,
in his head, and it's but because they cut that scene out, and you just see him with her, and you don't see him throwing the water. When you see the father still carrying the dead girl through the town, which is a haunting scene. That they look on that guy's face and the way he's walking, almost zombie-like, carrying his dead daughter, her lifeless body dangling, one stocking off. I mean, muddy. It's like it looks horrific. It's one of the most horrific scenes I've seen, or
the
images
look on
I've
that
seen.
Face is amazing too.
Yeah, but the thing is, because they cut him throwing her out of the water,
it didn't make sense.
It looks worse.
Yeah,
it looks like he raped her or beat her violently hurt her or something, right? It because it doesn't connect dots. People don't know. They just know the little girl's been murdered. And you think, well, what did he do to her? Because she looks like she's been through hell, like physically, like again, she's battered, and because of the water, I guess, dragging her through the water and all that. And there's a few other little lines and things were cut out of the original film, but I didn't realize that a lot of those scenes weren't seen until 1986. They were seen briefly when it was released in 31, but they were cut out.
Likely we've never seen the version without those scenes, Think about that. Hey, Jared, how you doing, buddy?
Hello. Apparently I missed the link.
It's a missing link.
It's the missing link.
Let's not beleaguer the fact that I have no sense of timing.
That's okay.
The fact is, I'm here.
We're talking about the first movie right now, where we're talking about that scene where, Frankenstein's monster throws
Maria.
The girl into the water, and Seth commented, Victor Frankenstein, the OG cousin fucker. Why didn't you say that out loud? Should we recast? Cousin fucker. Anyway, so any thoughts on the first movie, Jared, or that scene in particular?
I mean, it was kind of a chilling scene. I mean, you don't really get the fact that he was trying to do any harm to her until it actually happens, because I don't even think he knows what the fuck he's doing.
Right.
I don't know. That entire movie sits with me. This entire franchise does, because I think Frankenstein's monster in general kind of gets a bad rap because he's just a big child. He doesn't really know what he's doing for the most part until we start getting in the later movies.
Well, one of the things that I was going to say about that is in one of the later movies, I think it's the ghost of Frankenstein. He wants to have the brain of the child put into his brain or into his head, So it kind of not makes sense, but like, I don't know. He didn't get taught or taught more things until the second movie, when he meets the man and the old blind man.
Yeah.
Who doesn't judge him because he can't see him. But anyway, Seth, what do you got to say, man, other than the cousin fucker thing?
I don't know. The first movie is, like you guys are talking about, it's so well directed. I really love, especially the cemetery scene in the beginning. I just love the way it's between the set and the camera work. It's just really great.
Just Dwight and Colin like coming up over the fence, watching it like up to no good. It's so visually, it's great.
Yeah, and Colin Clive has a very distinct voice as well, and like, I don't know, it's just it's really good. I think it works better with Bride. Just as like one complete story. I prefer that. don't know.
Yeah, because this movie takes its time getting, like, people talk about, like we talked about Halloween Ends last week and how long it takes for Michael Myers to appear. The monster doesn't appear in this movie until half hour in.
Yeah.
And we're only talking about an hour and 10-minute long movie. So almost halfway through the film, we don't see the monster. It's a lot of build up, and Victor or Henry. Sorry, I've been doing that play, so Victor's on my head. Henry. Explaining, I like that he has the visitors, because that wasn't in the original book. That people, like the family comes to the like the experiment, but it opens it up to exposition, being like Henry has somebody to tell on screen what he's doing and how he's doing it, instead of telling the audience or telling Fritz, who wouldn't know anyway. So I dig that, but that's what we do take. It does take its time to get to where that scene where he's talking to Walden or Van Sloan, and you hear the footsteps coming, and it reveals itself in the doorway, walking in backwards and turning around. You see that incredible Jack Pierce makeup that I still think is. I didn't know that the reason like his jaw sunk in is because he had a bridge. Boris Karloff did. And he removed it so he could suck in his cheek like that.
That's cool.
And the reason he's more full-faced in the sequel is because he had to talk, so he couldn't take the bridge out. Another thought about the makeup. They added the eyelids. That was like a last-minute kind of thing. Go ahead, talk. I'm forgetting where I had another tidbit.
About the makeup?
About something that popped in my head when I was talking about the Karloff. I was going to talk about Karloff. He was like 40 something when he got this part.
44,
He had done like 80 films at this point, and this was what made him a star. And apparently James Wells spotted him at like a restaurant, I guess near the studio or whatever, and just thought he had the right look and asked him to come meet him to play the creature. Because there were other people, like, of course, I think John Carradine was up for it.
He's always everybody's second choice.
Who ends up in Bride of Frankenstein briefly.
Yeah. No, I'm glad they cast Karloff. I've always been curious about the makeup design and where they got the top of the head, why it's so flat. Did I miss something there? Or
it was they said because they had to remove the brain to move to open the head, but a lot of people say they just got that from the Edison Frankenstein movie from 1910 because it had the boxy head. And it's also they talk about makeup and credit. Like James Wells says that he came up with the look of the monster and the look of the bride, and then Jack Pierce says, "No, it was me. It was all me." So it's an interesting thing because I've done, like we talked about the creature and how Millicent Patrick came up with the drawing of the creature, and then another guy sculpted it, and Bud Westmore took all the credit. But who gets credit? Because I'm a director and I'm an artist. So when I have a creature costume in my movie, I draw it out. I tell them, well, here's what I see. And then another person takes it and makes it. So it was so James Wells is such a visual artist anyway. I'm sure he did have drawings or sketches that he gave Pierce. And then, but the thing is, once the artist starts putting it into physical form, things do change and shift. A lot of sculpts don't end up looking just like the drawings or the sketches or whatever. So it is a collaborative thing, but when something becomes so iconic, everybody wants to be the father of it. Unlike Henry Frankenstein, who doesn't want to be the father of his creation.
Yeah, that's true. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's an iconic makeup, and from this point on, that's the first thing. If you bring up Frankenstein's monster, or as most people say, just Frankenstein, this is what you think of is from this movie. I mean, I know that it's been changed. I really like. I've said it already before. I really like the way they did De Niro's makeup in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein from '94 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
It was more of a patchwork, and I know in 1957 when they made the Hammer Frankenstein, they couldn't use the flat top at all because Universal wouldn't let them. They would sue them. They said they would sue them if they did anything like close to it. So Christopher Lee's monster looks so much different. But I mean, throughout pop culture, costumes and everything, it's this makeup, this look that is what everybody thinks of when they think of the Frankenstein monster. The one thing, who does, like we talk about Colin Clive for a brief second, but he doesn't get enough credit as from what he did in the movie. And I mean, he has the most iconic line in the movie, in the whole movie. That, like, how many times have you heard "It's Alive" or "Are We Done"?
And Assess said his voice is so great.
Mhm.
He's just such a good voice, and I don't know. He is, and I've always felt that, like, no one talks about that dude. No one talks about Dwight Frye, who is great as Fritz.
Mhm.
Fritz is the reason this whole shit goes bad. I mean, Henry may have done a really good job if Fritz hadn't given them the wrong brain,
Yeah.
And
Abby
it was also Abby Normal, Abby something, and also Fritz is the one that antagonizes the monster. The monster is just kind of learning, and that great scene where he opens the roof and he sees the sunlight and he reaches for it. It's like, this is my God or something. He's never been kept in darkness. And, that's when Fritz comes in with the fire and he's like poking it at him and fucking with him.
Like poking a bear, yeah.
Yeah, like he gets killed for it.
I mean, that kind of deserved it, but
yeah.
Yeah. Seth, are you still there?
Yep.
Okay.
Eating pizza.
Oh, okay. Well, enjoy that. What kind?
Pepperoni, sausage, and bacon.
Sounds delicious. All right. Anyway, Jared, any more thoughts? I know we've still had a lot of other stuff to cover. So I kind of want to get to Bride because I think that's the one that is possibly the best of all the Universal movies. I don't know. I hate saying that because I know I have my own personal preference, but Jared, if you want, and Seth, if you want to touch on Frankenstein before we move on to Bride.
I mean, I think you guys probably covered it before I had a chance to find the fucking link, but like you guys said about Clive, like the way he completely took over the scene where the experiment, the surgery and all the stuff that goes along with the experiment, that was building up in this. This was something that nobody had ever fucking really seen before on that kind of a scale. But yeah, and it's very, very few and far between where a sequel is just as good or better. And I think Bride is a little better.
Yeah.
I think they complement each other.
That also. Sure. I mean, I think, Seth, you and I may have talked about it at some point where I think I'd like to see some kind of supercut. Maybe I know that the scene at the beginning of the movie with Mary Shelley and Lord Byron and all that talking, like we talked about before, how the idea of this Frankenstein story came up, which I do like that scene where they're trying to top each other with.
I love that scene.
I do too, but I still
love the set.
A supercut of like both movies pushed together because, in my opinion, you guys got to see Bride in the theater, and I think like it's if I watch 31's Frankenstein, I have to watch Bride after. It's almost like I have to satisfy the first movie in a way because I mean, like I like Bride of Frankenstein. I mean, I like Frankenstein a lot, and there's a lot to the movie, but there's so much going on. I mean, and again, Pretorius is one of my favorite characters in all of Universal. He's so weird and you gotta love that presentation, the Bride of Frankenstein. You gotta love that scene and even though like she's only in the end of the movie, like that her reveal was fantastic. So Anything else before we get? Let's because I want to get into Bride.
There was a lot to say about Frankenstein, but yeah, you jump into Bride because we got so many movies.
Yeah, because the Bride, I bet if I might have to miss work tomorrow. Oh, I bet if we talk about they asked our followers which is the favorite. I think I did actually. Which is the best one? I think most of them say Bride of Frankenstein, and for good reason. I think there's a lot of good reasons for it, but
Which is a bigger, grander film because they had, put some money into it. Frankenstein was made at kind of the beginning of this rise, and he does. It just goes on, and again, it works so well because it is from the same book. I mean, it's just the first movie doesn't really capture all of what's going on in the book because one of the things I don't think either movie does is an important part of the book is that this whole story ends with Frankenstein pursuing the monster and the monster leading him on to the ocean and to the North Pole, and it's that's the thing we didn't get, but the sequel does pull in from the second part of the novel where he meets the old blind man and starts to learn, even though it's brief. He doesn't really learn how to talk or read and writes and all that stuff like he does. But the Bride has just got it. Bride. What surprises me is some of the technical stuff that they pull off in Bride of Frankenstein, especially like the Pretorius, those little miniature people.
Yeah.
In the jars was like, whoa, that was cool.
Especially for that time, and he's got so many of them too.
Yeah.
It's like, what's he going to come over and then one guy climbing out of the bottle.
Yeah, cooking him up and drop him. Like, I want to know how they did that in 1935. Now they would just digitally do it. But they had to take some real work to make that happen. I know they shot it on black velvet or something. And
before that, you had the reveal of, well, not really the reveal, but the Invisible Man taking his bandage off, which was a big achievement for that time. That was before that. So who knows? That's the magic of filmmaking, But yeah, let's hear from Jared about Bride.
Let's hear from me.
Yeah, you.
Oh, okay. I actually did not refresh on this one today because I had to watch like 3 other ones.
I mean, Bride is like one that we probably have all seen a lot,
It has been. It's just been months since I've seen it, so it's not like really fresh in my memory. But kind of like you guys were alluding to before we changed to speaking about this film, you knew what Frankenstein's idea was. You knew that he was trying to find a mate for his monster, and like just seeing her face, I not just her face, I guess when she sees him and she gets scared, I think that is the most iconic scene of that movie that I think rings out the most to me. Is just that fact that she looks at him and sees him as being horrific, and then he just flips out.
Yeah,
it makes you feel bad for him.
Yeah, he doesn't handle rejection very well, though.
Well, it's because he knows what he looks like. That's mean.
That's mean.
Yeah, he talks.
I do have this picture for you.
Yeah, I dig it. It's like in the play we're doing, like he talks about how everyone has a mate, everyone has love, and what I liked about the play we're doing, and it's kind of strict from the book, Victor Frankenstein doesn't really know how to love. He's just completely wrapped up in himself and his work, that he only looks at Elizabeth as an object, as a specimen as well. Like he doesn't really love her. He loves the idea of a beautiful bride, and he wants to make the bride beautiful. But the Frankenstein just wants to be loved. He just wants a friend. He just wants a mate, someone who will accept him for who he is, and not throw stones at him and run and scream. So yeah, it's tragic when she rejects him. Like, what else? At that point he realizes there's no reason of living, because she was made for me and she rejects me and everyone else rejects me.
Yeah, he goes,
"We belong dead." It's tragic.
You hate me like others.
Yeah.
I get the thing he does with his hands. Yeah, but yeah, that last scene, it's again, it kind of makes both of these movies are make you feel a lot of sympathy, and for the monster himself, he's going to be alone, and if he can't be alone, you know, he's going to destroy the fucking tower or whatever. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of they're kind of sad movies in a way, you know. You feel bad for his very sympathetic character, which I like. I never thought about that until last few years when I mean, I've seen these movies a ton over time, but it's a different Frankenstein's monster from any other adaptation too. You know, like I said, sympathy and I know he wants to find companionship in other works as well. But I don't know. More and more I watch this, the more I feel bad for. Uh, and Carlos' performance is so great in these movies. And I found this too. She looked amazing.
I love the way she moves and looks. Like she said, she developed that movement and the spitting and all that and the hissing from watching swans at the park. Like she goes, swans are awful, dirty little creatures, and that's where she got that. It's just so weird, yeah. And then she goes,
the tick and the it's like, yeah, and she plays it up really well, and it's only on screen for a handful.
Two or 3 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. But and she's all over the. I wonder, did they advertise with her on the cover or in the posters back then?
I think she's on some of the posters.
Well, I know she's on like posters now, but like back then, I wonder like if I don't know, because that like gives away the entire ending. It's your choice. Sorry, I'm tired. But anyway, yeah. So I really do think in her short performance, she's very effective, and she looks fantastic. Again, I look at. Oh my god.
Yeah, I like Elsa. Most people know she plays Mary Shelley in the beginning.
Yeah.
Also Lancaster, and I love her as Mary Shelley too. Like when Byron's going on about that Frankenstein came from this, and she kind of does that little girlish giggle, like it's kind of fun to. I mean, even think about that this 19-year-old girl is responsible for creating arguably the greatest horror story ever written,
especially back in 200 years ago. Yeah. Nowadays there are plenty of women creators who are coming up with some good terrifying content, but back 200 years ago, like here's a good image for you.
She's so bored.
Well, yeah, they're not as good as she is telling stories and creating.
Because Percy and Byron were sleeping together that night.
Probably. Yeah. God, what's weird is I was before the show I was reading about. I didn't realize they died so young. Those two, even her, she was 53 when she died, Mary Shelley. But they were only in. I think Lord Byron was like 36, and then Percy was only 29, I think.
Didn't Clive pass away fairly shortly after? He was an alcoholic.
He was a big time alcoholic. Yeah.
A lot of alcoholics on this production, I think that they kind of died young.
Well, that was the thing to do back in the 30s: drink your ass off and
sure,
probably snort cocaine. And I don't know, cocaine probably wasn't around back then. I don't know.
I do cocaine.
Tons of homosexual intercourse. Well, James Well was himself a homosexual, wasn't he?
Yeah, he ended up committing suicide in 57. Drowned himself in his bath, his swimming pool. Yeah, he was having a lot of health problems. I think he had a couple strokes, and he ended up killing himself.
Colin Clive drank himself to death, and then well, he had tuberculosis, but sure, drinking didn't help. But I'm glad that we got what we got from them when we did. I mean, especially with these two great films. And I'm glad, again, Karloff is another thing that we only got him for the first 3 movies, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. and I think we're kind of low. Although he did come back and he played a great part in which one was that, Seth? The
Where he played the doctor.
yeah,
I think it was House of Frankenstein.
House.
Yeah, not a great movie, but he elevated it a little bit, in my opinion, because they were like teetering on B movies at that point.
And we brought this up in the chat about when me and Seth, you were the one that saw Bride on the big screen, right? Me and you.
Yep.
When we watched it, we realized that the beginning of Halloween Kills is an homage to Bride of Frankenstein, because it's pretty much the same when the Marie's father falls into the windmill, it's full of water, and the monster comes out of the darkness and attacks them, and then the wife holds her hand down, and the Frankenstein monster comes up and throws her. That's the firefighter scene in Halloween Kills. It had to have been intentional. And also, it kind of, now watching the ends, it kind of made me think of it, because the creature does kind of come out of like the rock, and like Michael comes out of the sewer, and he's in the I don't know why we're getting on Halloween, but I like that opening scene. I love one of the things this movie has more than the first one is the comedy.
Yeah.
Well, really leaned into the camp of horror and made fun, in some ways self-mocked it. But like that, I just laughed my way through this movie, especially that lady. I don't know what her role is, but like she just running her mouth, and the Burger Master's like, "Oh, shut up."
Yeah. It's like finally somebody tells her to shut up, though, because she starts from the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
It's like, shut up, lady. And then the
But I love that.
Says it. Yeah.
It's almost like she's like playing her same character from The Invisible Man.
Yeah. And Well does that all the way through. Like in Old Dark House is a comedy, is a black comedy. The characters are so quirky and funny. When we get a lot of carryover, we get, the guy that played Pretorius was in No Dark House. And,
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Have a potato. And apparently Claude Rains was going to play Pretorius, but he was doing another film at the time and couldn't do it. But cool. I like when the monster meets Pretorius, when he's like goes into the graveyard, goes down into and he's like hears them, and he's hiding, he's in the shadows. And then we get Dwight Fry again as Carl, and another creepy performance from. Dwight's in like all of them, pretty much. But he pops up, but he keeps getting smaller parts.
Old, but I mean, he's in a good bulk of the Universal horror movie, early ones anyway. Yeah, he's almost the face of Universal horror. Not really, but you gotta love him anyway. Dwight Fry. I wish he would have had bigger roles in.
Holy shit!
What?
That's a fun fact.
We're
talking about Dwight Fry. He's actually born in Salina, Kansas, back in 1899.
Really? He's American? I didn't know that.
That's about almost 2 hours from where I am.
That's pretty cool. Good old Dwight Fry. When did he die? How long did he live?
1943.
Yeah, I was gonna say 44 years old, huh?
Yeah, and I want to say he died of something like you guys were talking about with some of the other ones.
These Universal players don't live very long, do they? I mean, Karloff. I mean, he lived a long time, and Lugosi did too. Fuck Karloff. So
this movie moves too, like when they catch him, and like when they're chasing him through the woods, and they basically crucify him in some ways and put him on.
It's like a Christ-like imagery in that. Scene.
And then they like chain him up in the dungeon in the chair, and he breaks free and goes on the rampage through the city, and you get all the people running and all the like the dead little girl and all these people. It's
coming across colorized versions of these images, and they're very interesting. Oh, what do you guys think of that? It's weird looking. It's jarring almost.
Yeah. Black and white's the way to go.
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely.
I know Son of Frankenstein, they were going to film that in color. And
With
apparently
the set they have, I'm glad they didn't, because the
Yeah.
set that's what I can't wait to talk about the set design and that. It's almost harkens back to a movie like Dr. Caligari, you know. It's
that was very German
very
expressionistic.
expressionist, yeah.
And there is color footage though of Karloff and Pierce together, right, on Son of Frankenstein.
Yeah, there. I saw some. I'll see if I can pull it up because I saw a few things and I was like, "Is that real or did somebody do that on their own?" Because it always looked like when they colorized black and white movies that somebody just colored everything with a pastel, like pastel colored pencils or something like that. There's a picture of Basil Rathbone, Lugosi. It's like a promo. Let me show this to you guys. It's pretty cool. Kind of like that Mary Shelley's one I just showed with Mary Shelley and her boyfriends. Well, they were boyfriends.
Yeah.
Poor Mary Shelley. I heard Lord Byron had a club foot. Or no, but maybe that was Percy.
His foot's in the club all the time, getting laid.
Totally. Did it not? Oh, there it is. Yeah. Really cool image. When we're talking about that, I keep searching for things like that looks really cool. Yeah. Anyway, so let's wrap up Ride so we can get the sun. We got a few more things to get to.
Yeah.
Seth, do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, I love Bride of Frankenstein very much. I think
you?
it's quite. Yeah.
No.
Just okay, just a little bit.
Okay.
But it's, to me, it's always been like one of those ultimate sequels. I'm really a sucker for sequels that kind of pick up immediately where the first one ended, sort of acting like a second half of one big story. And this one is, it feels bigger, you know, in scope and with its story. You know, it's like Frankenstein was the sort of like the setup. It was the character-driven one.
Mm-hmm.
This one introduces like more characters, and it's just everything is just bigger. And the music, especially when the bride is revealed, I just love that.
All the bells ringing.
Yeah, it was really cool. It's very theatrical. And I really like Pretorius as a secondary villain. He's kind of almost like the Joker in a little ways, because it's like he keeps lying about, like, you know, this is my one weakness, and it's like different every time.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And you know, and just I love Henry Frankenstein's arc through the two films. You know, he starts off, he's very arrogant. He's making this monster, and he kind of halfway through that, he learns he made a mistake. And then in this one, he's just kind of like forced. He's almost, you know, he's pretty much blackmailed into doing it again. And he's really reluctant to do it. It's just a good story arc for him. And yeah, it's always been one I've held very high, because I just works on every level. And like I said earlier, I think it complements the first movie a lot. Like, when I watch Frankenstein, I have to watch Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Yeah,
and I get that one big story and that big picture. And there's a lot of other great things too. It's just like when it's like Dwight Fry's character Carl, is it? You know, like he's a little bit more. He's a little shadier than his character in the first one, and
he's a straight murderer in this.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually like that moment too, where he almost kind of like brags about this body being the fresh one, and you know, Pretorius kind of like shuts him up because he doesn't want Henry to know that it's someone who's just like off the street that he just killed. Yeah, it's a great movie all around. It's just like that one lady, man, she drives me nuts. She drives me nuts in Invisible Man as well. Just kind of hard to take, you know. But
I like her because they go full bore with her though. Like just
I'm glad it didn't last very long though, because she starts off at the windmill or whatever, and then all the way into town, it's like, when is she going to disappear? It's like almost like every time I watch the movie. So I do love the movie, but every time I watch it and this lady's on there, it's like, why do they do this? You know, why, James Whale, why? But yeah, Jared, do you have anything you want to say before we move on to my favorite?
No, not really. Not that I can think of. I think we covered all the things.
What about you, Nate?
I can't think anything. Something pops in my head. So I had a lot of, I read all a lot of trivia and behind the scenes stuff and development stuff, but I can't think of anything right now.
Okay, so the next one we're going to be talking about is my favorite of the bunch, and it's not saying that the other two movies are any worse or this is better. It's just I didn't actually see Son of Frankenstein until 2009, maybe 2010. It was on, oddly enough, it was on Netflix, and I was going through the movies in October. I watched The House of the Devil, one of my favorite Ty West films. My favorite Ty West film. Let's just get that out of the way. And then Insidious was on there, and I saw that pop up. I'm like, I've never seen this before, and I watched it, and holy shit, man! The performances, and I know that Lionel Atwell's character gets really like mocked hard in Son of Frankenstein, but I really like his character in this movie. And
Mel Brooks didn't help.
No, Mel Brooks did not help. That's okay because the dark scene, the dark scene's so good in that movie. But something about Basil Rathbone, and I heard that they were going to try to get Colin Clive. They wanted to get him back, but at this point he was gone by a couple years or a year to reprise his role. But I'm glad they didn't because Basil Rathbone is so good, and he gets. I think if Colin Clive was in the movie, it would take away from the performance of probably the best performance of every one of the movies, in my opinion, is Lugosi's performance as Igor. He is so good. He's so slimy. He's so sneaky. He tries to kill Frankenstein at the beginning of the fucking movie, and he's like, no. It's like, and he gets in his ear, and then he's able to dupe Frankenstein so fucking easily. He's such a good character. And then the one scene that really stands out for me with him, I love when he talks about his broken neck, but he's talking to the elders in the town or whatever, the like on the stand or whatever like that. And he eventually like coughs on one of the guys. He's like, I got a bone in my throat.
I love that part where he coughs, spits out like, sorry, I have a bone in my throat.
Yeah, it's so,
and he's like one of the guys that hung him, right? Like,
yeah.
So
and then
like,
the best part is they're trying to decide whether or not they can kill him again. Like, it didn't take the first time. So
I already did, but they can't kill.
I don't know if this was planned to be played up for laughs, but this one it's like the Jason Lives of the Frankenstein movies. It's got a little bit of everything you want. I mean, of course, the monster doesn't get shown till later. He looks a little bit different, and that kid is a very annoying kid in the movie.
Kid cracks me up because he's like Basil Rathbone's son, but he's got such a Southern American.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like, where's he from?
That was the kid that did
I saw a giant covered in fur.
He did the voice for Bambi.
Really?
For Disney, yeah.
Oh man,
that little kid. One thing I want to bring up for Son of Frankenstein, the reason it was made. Universal had gotten out of making horror movies, and they weren't doing well. And then in 1938, they did a double feature of Dracula and Frankenstein, and it was just a fucking hit. Like they made so much money, so they said, "Oh shit!" So that's why we got all those more horror films in 1939 and the 40s.
Second cycle of Universal, almost at Hammer.
Man, Son of Frankenstein was that, and his son is a strong one. It's unfortunate that Karloff's character is basically backwards. He doesn't talk anymore. It really is Igor's film, but I think that works because of the story. Because the movie, the continuity isn't really there. This movie almost plays its own because we know that Igor was never Dr. Frankenstein's assistant. That's all new. And
his assistant dies.
Yeah.
And
So it's just kind of its own thing. It's not really a trilogy. This is kind of a new reboot.
Well, no, I mean the next movie they introduce another son.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah.
Which son are you now?
And then a daughter, right? Or no, was it a granddaughter?
Bela, one of the interesting stories of but I don't think Igor was supposed to be such a big part of the film. From what I read, the studio lowballed Bela Lugosi because at this point they didn't see him as being as big as he was in the early 30s, and he wasn't a big draw, and they knew that he was in financial trouble.
Yeah.
He needed the money. Yeah. Well, I don't know how much Ed Wood was accurate, if he was a heroin addict at that point or morphine addict or whatever it was he was taking. I guess it was morphine. But yeah, so because the studio knew that he was in dire straits or needed the money, they were trying to pay him very, very little. I think he was only getting, I don't know, $500 a week or something. But apparently the director, the legend was that Basil and Boris went to bat for him and said, you're going to pay Bela appropriately or you're not going to get us. But that's not, actually, that was all fabricated. Apparently the director was the one who knew about it, thought it was bullshit, and gave Bela more stuff to do. Gave him more scenes, kept him working on the film so that he would make more money, and it really is his best performance. I think most people feel that way.
Dracula's more iconic, and he gets a lot more credit because he is the face of what Dracula became. But yeah, his role as Igor is so fucking good. And talking about iconic, everything else that you see with Frankenstein's assistant becomes Igor instead of Fritz, and
it's pronounced Igor.
Igor. God, we probably should talk about Frankenstein at some point. That movie's amazing.
Yeah, it's hard not to watch those films and see young Frankenstein because Mel Brooks. That's my favorite Mel Brooks movie, and he did it so well. He just nailed it.
I think that might be my favorite too. Blazing Saddles comes to mind, and there's one that he did years later called Life Stinks, I think, that I really liked, where he's a rich guy and they take all his money and he has to be like, he becomes a bum. You ever see that one?
Yeah.
I think that's the name of it. I can't remember.
I remember the TV spots where Life Stinks.
Life Stinks, yeah. But anyway, Mel Brooks, I love Mel Brooks stuff. It's good to be the king. Anyway, so I don't know. There's a lot to this movie. I've already I went on like a rant without breathing about how much I love this movie. But one of the things that I mentioned earlier is the set design, especially in Frankenstein's house, and even in the old laboratory with the roof blown off. It's a really cool movie to look at. And great performances all around from Rathbone, Atwell, and Karloff in his last performance as the monster. And that
I like that finale where it kicks the monster into that was a big fucking moment, and it's shot well, it's performed. And apparently, like Karloff's scream in that scene, they used it forever, like give it a stock scream.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's a really great finale. And I love this movie through and through. That's the longest too, I think.
Yeah,
it's like an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah, it's the like we talk about how if I watch Frankenstein, I got to watch Bride of Frankenstein, but for some reason this is the one I go to the most. Just like Jason, like I said, Jason Lives. This is my Jason Lives of the series. It's the one that I think it's underrated a little bit. Nobody really ever talks about it, and I'm not sure why, because like the first three Frankenstein movies could be the best three Universal movies, period, of the horror cycle. I know, Seth, you're like, the Wolf Man, come on. But like, I don't know, there's something about the cast, the set, just everything about, and Lugosi's performance alone in this movie. It's one of the best performances in the entire series.
Well, I love a revenge story, and the fact that he's like using the creature to get his revenge on these men who murdered him or hung him or whatever. It's a really cool plot. Yeah. Talking about casting, I believe two actors who were up for Frankenstein's son, other than Rathbone, was Claude Rains again, and Peter Lorre. And I think we talked about that. I don't think Peter, if I remember right, Peter Lorre never actually did a Universal movie.
Did he not?
I don't think he did. I think I read that he was not part of Universal's productions at that time. And I don't think he did. If he did, it was one of the big iconic monster.
He would have been
movies.
a great Fritz or Igor.
Oh yeah, and some people do his voice when they do Igor.
That's true. Yeah.
When they talk about Igor, they Igor. You know, it doesn't sound like
Bela
Lugosi. It sounds like Peter Lorre. It was I think Warner Brothers had Igor in the cartoons. And
you remember, he had the dead eye, like the droopy dead eyes, and
yeah. And
what was that?
I think it was a Warner Brothers cartoons.
Was it a Bugs Bunny thing?
Probably.
I feel like. Do you remember Daffy Duck's Quackbusters?
Oh, where he becomes like the Dr. Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Yeah.
Well, there's a whole movie of all their monster segments that they put together, and Daffy Duck is actually he does that bit, but he's like an investigator who goes and seeks out all these. That's one of my favorite things of all time is Quackbusters. I haven't either. I'm surprised I don't own it.
I need to see if it's out there. I want to get that. I'm
going to check right now because I love that fucking. That's a good kid horror thing.
Yeah, the Looney Tunes were always the best cartoons.
Yeah. No disagreement here. Quackbusters. Anyway, but yeah. You guys, I talked a lot about this. What, Seth, Jared, what do you guys think of Son?
Not it.
I think it's a really strong movie. I think the story itself feels much more complete than say the first two did. And I think it's underrated because it's overshadowed by James Whale's two films, and for very good reason. I mean, those films are excellent, and just for some reason, this wasn't sort of packaged like those two films were for a long time. It's really just those two films that were getting released on home video and stuff like that, and not so much the third one, but
not so way late, if I'm not mistaken. When they released that big set, sometime in the early 90s, I think it was.
Yeah.
By the way, guys, check this out. $10.
Quackbusters.
I am buying it now. Anyway.
Igor is definitely my favorite character, and I kind of look at the Frankenstein series just mainly as the first four, with like a split of two different, just bigger stories. You know what I mean? 1 and 2 go together so well.
Yeah,
they fit within continuity of each other. Besides some like recasting, and then Son and Ghost, they fit together very well.
It's basically the Son saga if you think about it.
And with Igor being the carryover. Because like I think Nate pointed out, the continuity isn't really there.
It's never there, really. If you it's never like you're right. They're paired off these movies,
So many overlapping actors reused in the next ones. Like even the little girl he kills in the first one is like one of the girls in Bride. The little girls at the school, or when they find the girl dead. There's so many like carryover. I spotted the dad of Maria. They recast them in Bride, but the guy that played the dad of Maria carrying her around in Frankenstein is in one of these sequels. I spotted him in the crowd. Like, he's one of the. I think he's one of the judges in Son, maybe, or one of the, or maybe it's Ghost. But I say, that's the dad from the first movie. Yeah.
Well, apparently back in the 30s. Universal Studios only had 12 total actors. So, yeah, they had to make do.
It's like, we just got to come back in.
Yeah, and they still couldn't pay Lugosi.
Yeah, bring your wife out and your daughter out, and they'll be the extras.
Yeah. Oh man, but yeah, it's like they were before Quentin Tarantino was using the same actors all the time. It was Universal, but anyway, yeah, I what? December 2nd. It's gonna take me a month to get this fucking thing.
Yeah.
Dun, dun.
Goddamn UPS. No. Because I still bodies it.
Yeah.
Because they said, but I love Bela.
Yeah, he's good. So, Ghost of Frankenstein is the next one, and it's the story is Igor wants to get his brain put into Frankenstein's body, right? That's this one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But after her son, they start getting kind of muddled for me. Like I know I've seen all of them except for with the exception of Abbott and Costello. I still haven't seen that one. I've seen it when I saw it when I was a kid, but not in the past, how many ever years. But like anyway, this one, yeah. So and then we get to see another son of Frankenstein, which, like Seth was saying, they do kind of, well, I said they pair up, but we get Ludwig Frankenstein, and he's a lesser Frankenstein in my opinion. But this movie's not bad overall. Seth, I know you are a fan of this one, right?
Yeah, I think it's pretty strong. I think it's
I like it.
probably the weaker of the four.
Mm.
The recasting of the monster is pretty obvious. The story is basically it's just like a rehash of what came before with
Monster
minor
Lon Chaney in this one, right?
What's that?
It's Lon Chaney.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, Lon Chaney
Yeah,
plays
then it's Lugosi, then Strange. Yeah, anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, but I do really kind of like the idea of, the idea of them trying to put a different brain inside the monster and Igor sort of manipulating the situation by kind of going to the assistant and trying to get his brain in there and not tell, Frankenstein himself. Where it's a little confusing is that in Son of Frankenstein, the wife was called Elsa, and then in this one, this Frankenstein's daughter is named Elsa, and it's it's a little confusing there, but yeah. Overall, I think it's a good one. I actually really do like, especially with the ending. The transplant being successful and the monster going blind.
Yeah.
Right. But it's really cool, and that's why as much as I love Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, for obvious reasons, it's such a missed opportunity to I don't know why they didn't do that, because you have Bela Lugosi finally being the monster, which is perfect after he gets Igor's brain in. Like,
Right.
that would have been perfect, and he's walking around like he's blind, and for some reason they cut all that shit out. But
Yeah.
Disregarded, and he's just lumbering around like a freaking
Yeah.
zombie.
One of the parts that I really like about the end of this movie is when he gets the brain transplant, because like throughout the movie, Igor is boasting about my brain in that body. Like Freddy trying to get in Jesse's body.
I just have to play devil's advocate for a second. When did Igor become so educated in manipulation? Like, do you want to be head doctor of the Regency?
Some people have, yeah, he got a bone. Some people just have that slimeball quality about them that they can manipulate people. I mean, look at how many women bitch about manipulative men out there that are pieces of shit. So, I don't know. But his performance isn't as good. But I do like when he gets the transplant and he's can't see a goddamn thing, It's just like that's what you get. You get the body, but you can't see a fucking thing, asshole. You know, it's like I don't know. It feels like it's deserved. So anyway,
So,
Nate, what did you think of this one?
Do you guys think maybe that's why Bela acts the way he does as Frankenstein in the next one?
No, they just cut that shit apart. He was
he was the first monster to do that. Like,
which is what everybody thinks the monster does too.
That's what I was thinking when I was rewatching it again. I was like, everybody thinks Frankenstein's monster lumbers around like a freaking.
No, he was supposed to be blind.
But he never did. He always walked with his arms down.
Mm-hmm.
He would only raise his arms if he had to defend himself or he was grabbing something.
Yeah. Or throwing little girls in rivers.
Bela's out there like here trying to like feel for things and.
Yeah, I think even he was supposed to have a couple of lines in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman as well, but they cut all that out. I think in post production. I don't know why.
Because he sounded like Dracula.
It is funny.
I think it did have something to do with the voice, if I remember correctly. Like they thought.
Why wouldn't they dub it then? Like because his voice was in Ghost of Frankenstein. Why would that be a problem?
I don't know. If I remember correctly, the issue was the voice. Like they didn't. Someone at the studio or whatever didn't think that audiences would take it seriously or something like that.
So they made him just look like an idiot and blind.
It was a little funny when he does start talking like Bela goes like, "Hi, Igor."
As Frankenstein. Yeah,
it was a little funny.
It was strange. It was a little jarring, but they did the good camera work in those scenes though, because like the scene where he says, "Hi, Igor," it's the like very creepy looking. I don't know. I mean, overall, this one's pretty good. I mean, like I said, they start really tailing off after this one, and even the monsters not shown as much. And I think in the very last one, House of Frankenstein or House of Dracula, they reuse a shot at the end of the movie from like the end of the previous movie. I think something along those lines.
Milking the hell out of it.
Yeah, it's
in the 40s.
Yeah. Anyway, Nate, was this the first time for you, or because I know that?
No, I'd seen all of them before the show. This was my second time seeing Ghost, and beyond that, I like Ghosts of Frankenstein. Probably because of Bela and Igor. I like when they're traveling together. They have to leave. Wherever the hell they are, Ingolstadt or Geneva or whatever the fuck. But it's not one I would probably go back to a lot. Yeah, I don't. Karloff's absence as the monster, he looked the best. He performed the best. I don't really like anybody else as the monster. Honestly. I think, and the monster just becomes a secondary character just there to be the monster. He loses identity. He loses importance in some ways, where he's just this thing. Oh, it's Frankenstein's creation. It's Frankenstein's monster. I gotta, everyone's. He's just a thing. He's not a character anymore in some ways. And I think that's where the sequels after Son. I mean, even in Son, he's kind of sidelined even though it's Karloff. He's not that important to the film as he was in the first two.
Yeah, not as featured.
So the creature becomes just a supporting character in everything after Bride, I think. And it becomes Igor's movies for two, and that's what shines about them. After that, they become mostly Lon Chaney Wolfman movies, Larry Talbot movies in some ways.
Yeah,
which I'm fine.
Yeah, Seth alluded to that, where Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman is more of a Wolfman, and it came after the 41 Wolfman film, and they had to switch Chaney out from being Frankenstein's monster to be, because he's Talbot, and
which I'm fine with. That's what's enjoyable about those movies is I like Lon Chaney Jr. as Larry Talbot.
Yeah.
He's a actual character. It's not like some new, and it's always Lon Chaney Jr. It's not like some new actors playing Dracula now, or some new actors playing Dr. Frankenstein, or some new actors playing the monster. It's like it's consistently the Larry Talbot we all know, and you could tell that.
We mentioned Larry Talbot, and Seth slowly comes back into frame.
What?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, Lon Chaney Jr. is, I think, one of the only people to play the same character through multiple movies in these Universal films. Everyone else, every other character was switched up, but the Wolfman was always Lon Chaney Jr. Even though, as they kept going on, fuck continuity, hardcore.
Well, they killed him off and brought him back without even explaining it.
Yeah. Are we? My on my side, I keep glitching like crazy, so I'm missing big chunks of what you guys are saying. Have we moved on to Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, or are we still on Ghost?
No, we probably should though.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
All right.
Hey, speak your piece, Seth.
Frankenstein meets the Wolfman is one of my favorite of the Universal monster movies, mainly because it is more of a direct sequel to the Wolfman in almost every way. Story-wise, you know, we follow Larry, and I really love how they brought Maleva back, and you know, and then once again they brought in Elsa Frankenstein, which I think is supposed to be the daughter of the one from Ghost. I think. Yeah, I love Frankenstein meets the Wolfman a lot. I think it's a really fun movie. Don't really care for the big musical scene, but
yeah, what the hell was that?
I don't think Larry Talbot did either.
Did it work for the Mummy? Is that why they did it? Like, come on.
You're right. Yeah, the one in the Mummy.
Then they did it in one of the Mummy movies too. It's like it's time for the musical part of it. It's like, God, what? This is so out of place.
Yeah.
And plus, like the music in the movie in general, if I'm thinking of the right movie, is very like more upbeat than anything. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of good in this movie. Like, and you know, this is the one where Talbot wants to die, and he goes to try to.
He wants to die in all of them.
Well, yeah. So, but is this the one with the hunchback who loves the gypsy girl?
Nope. That's
okay,
how
that's the next one. Okay.
Yeah.
See these movies, even though I watch them, they get all mixed up in my head. So
yeah.
So basically, Larry Talbot is brought back after grave robbers remove the.
This is the one with Frankenstein's daughter who has her boyfriend try to help him put the brain into the Wolfman. Is that? I'm confused.
Yeah.
Shit, I'm totally confused. So
it is. It's kind of like which I don't remember. It's like is this Friday the 13th part 3 or
now she has like an Eastern European accent in this one, which didn't add up at all.
It's like me in the Friday the 13th movie. Like, is this the one with the guy in the wheelchair? Is this the one with the guy?
that's part 2.
I know, but like I used to get that way. Like I don't remember who's getting killed in which movie. Is she the one in the boat? Is she the one? She got the mask in this one.
Seth, you know these the best, apparently.
Yeah. So basically, you know, Larry Talbot is brought back from, you know, because of the grave robbers. He wants to die. He goes to see Maleva. She tells him about Dr. Frankenstein, so they go together to go find him. Of course, he gets there, he finds out that he's dead, but Larry's still persistent on wanting to get the journals. And along the way, this doctor who's kind of caring for him in the beginning kind of gets involved, and the idea was to make Larry human by, I don't know, I guess his energy going into the monster or something like that. Like they were doing some weird thing,
some kind of energy transference.
Yeah. I don't know. I love the final fight between the Wolfman and the monster.
Yeah, that's the best part.
Yeah.
It really is.
I liked all the characters. I liked the story. I don't know. I just like this whole thing. I think it's a really fun movie. I watched it a lot.
I like it. I don't remember every detail in order because you said like once you start recasting and adding all these new characters and all that, you do get like, oh, is this the one with Boris? as the oh no, or was the other doctor or his daughter? Yeah, you gotta get like I remember Larry Talbot. I remember the monster.
You know, it's like how many
But
how many crazy scientists am I supposed to care about in this
yeah,
movie?
it's like another mad scientist who wants to be Dr. Frankenstein.
Right.
That's kind of the negative with this movie, though. Is like the doctor played by Patrick Knowles. Like he's
What is he back there with you?
he's also he played a different character in the Wolfman. His
Oh,
name is
okay. Yeah.
But like his character like wants to help Larry throughout most of the movie, and then he has this sudden like change at the end where all of a sudden he wants to be like a mad scientist out of nowhere. That's the only kind of negative that I have with it. But
yeah, he gets wrapped up in the being God, I guess, or being.
Yeah.
But the end fight is really where it's at, and that's what you came to see, you know, like
Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah, like Freddy versus Jason.
Or like Halloween Ends.
Is this the first? Is this the first movie that we do like say this monster versus that monster that ever existed?
Yeah, I think so. I think it is, and this is the first one that really puts the universe together. The shared universe, the very first shared universe, if you will. But I don't know. It's okay. I think the ending is what holds this movie high. It would hold it higher on a list that I would make, which I'm going to give you guys my list on the chat later, up to date list, because I'm doing that. So, but I think there's a part of me that does like the next one. I think it's House of Frankenstein, right?
Yep.
A little bit better because I mean Dracula's in it for a few minutes. But yeah, exactly. He's on screen for a few minutes and then dies. Is that the one where he dies by they move the coffin to the date? Or is that the next one?
I think the thing I like about this one was the hunchback guy being in love with the girl, the whole love triangle thing. I dig that.
The gypsy girl, yeah, and then she likes Lon Chaney's Larry Talbot. Yeah, and plus again, Karloff comes back to this movie, and I love the end of the movie with Karloff.
Yeah.
And I like that he takes a big breath before he goes underwater. I don't know if you guys noticed that or under the.
Okay.
I thought that was pretty good, but yeah, I think I prefer this one over the last one, honestly. Overall, as a movie, because like in the other one, I feel like you are kind of waiting to see the two villains pop up. By the way, I watched Freddy versus Jason the other day. Holy shit, that movie does not hold up. Whew. It was rough to sit through.
You said Freddy versus Jason?
Yeah.
Whenever I put like the remake above it, people are like, "You're crazy! Freddy vs. Jason's 10 times better." But have you watched that movie recently?
It's really not like
it's not that good.
I've been rewatching a lot of movies this year to read. I like to update my rankings every year, and that was the last Freddy movie other than the remake I need to watch. And I'm like, holy shit, this might be the worst of all of them so far.
Definitely one of those movies where the soundtrack is probably better than the movie.
That's probably true.
I think it's my least favorite Freddy movie.
It might be mine also. But anyway, House of Frankenstein, I don't think it's that bad. It's a little cheesy, but overall I think it's good. I do like the scene where the hunchback, which is funny because if you think on Chaney, Hunchback of Notre Dame, she accepted him the way he was. Now this gypsy girl is like repulsed by him when he, kind of pours it out for her. It's kind of an interesting scene, and goddamn, she is super repulsed by him. I didn't expect her to be like that.
She
seemed like such a kind character,
Yeah, I like the 180 of her.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're disgusting.
Yeah,
I want Larry Talbot.
Well, yeah, why wouldn't you? I mean,
why wouldn't you want? Yeah, 6'4" Lon Chaney Jr.
Yeah, and no, never mind.
He's in the friend zone.
Yeah, unfortunately, and the next movie we get a female hunchback. So, just saying, the equal opportunity. We get a male hunchback and a female hunchback. So, Jared, did you get through House of Frankenstein? No. Have you ever seen it? No. Oh, wow. And we go quiet. What about Nate? You watched this one, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, said I it's okay. I like the love triangle story, but that was about the only special thing to me about it overall.
Yeah.
The only thing memorable about it, it's you know, you can almost say they all go just, you know, from they go down, except for Bride of Frankenstein. It's kind of I almost want to give them a tie, the first two movies,
Pretty even, yeah.
because they're totally different kind of movies, although they connect. And you know, one was bigger budgeted, and I think they were big, you know, go big or go home kind of attitude on Bride. James Well just bringing it, but they just kind of go down. This is the Jason Goes to Hell of the Frankenstein movies. It was like, okay, we're out of ideas.
Are you sure it's not Jason Takes Manhattan?
It's Jason Takes. Well, yeah, just as Manhattan is the worst one. So it's yeah, the scene where Boris Karloff uses a guitar and kills somebody with it.
At least he didn't break out in fucking song and dance like in the last movie where we had a big musical number. You know,
it's okay because we get that great fight at the end.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's a better Larry Talbot movie too.
Is there anything we want to touch on House of Dracula? I mean, the monster's barely in that movie, and I think that's the one where they reuse the footage from the end of. I think it's Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, maybe. I don't remember. Like I said, man, I am having trouble keeping up with all these. After Son or maybe even Ghost, it starts to really like blend together for me.
Personally, for me, I don't really care for the two House movies very much.
Yeah.
No.
House of Frankenstein, you know, like you guys said, with Daniel, the Hunchback, and with the ending, you know, with especially what the monster does to Boris Karloff's character. Those are cool stuff, but these two House movies are just so redundant and they're so repetitive, and it's just the same old. I mean, Larry's story is exactly what was previous. Just everything that happens is almost like it's been done before multiple times, and so these are two that I don't put in very often because I just don't care. They're sort of on the bottom of my Universal list, to be honest with you. Even though they are Larry Talbot sequels, you know, he's in it, but there's not really much progression with his character at all. It's just the same thing. I want to die. I go see a scientist. They can't do anything. I turn to the Wolfman. I die. I come back for no fucking reason at all.
Yeah, I don't think the whole idea. I mean, you think it's great, but to take all these iconic characters, throw them all in one movie, and then try to code it together with characters no one gives a fuck about. Well, you know, is really where the problem goes.
As far as the Wolfman dying, we also got to remember that people couldn't rewatch these movies before, you know. And I know a couple of these came out in the same year, or you know, within pretty close to the same time.
They knew that the horror kids, they just wanted to see the monsters. That's what they were excited about. They just want to see, just like people want. I just want to see Michael Myers. Why does it take an hour to show Michael Myers and Halloween? It's the same way with those movies. People went to see the monster and the Wolfman. And like you said, like some of them, they're really not there. You got to watch a bunch of new characters. You get Karloff, but he's playing somebody else, and he's just another mad scientist guy. And he's still great as Boris Karloff, but it's like I'd almost rather see him as the monster, make the movie about the monster again with Karloff as the monster. But he wasn't going to do that anyway. He wasn't going to play it. But yeah, they're the House movies. I agree, Seth. They're just bleh.
Yeah.
No, Nate, were you the only one to watch the Abbott and Costello? I did not. I don't have a copy of it.
I started. I ran out of time, but I'd seen it a couple times before. A lot of people feel that's the greatest horror comedy of all time.
I know I've heard it's the best of the Abbott and Costello.
Oh, yeah.
Funny enough, I got the Dr. Phibes movies the other day.
Yeah.
I saw the DVD for all three of those, and I was like, I could get these. And I was like, I think we're done with. I don't need to watch these right now.
Yeah, Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein is funny. I mean, I love Lou Costello, and he's really good being
And
scared.
Lugosi's in this one as Dracula too.
Yeah,
right?
that's what you get to see Lugosi as Dracula. You get to see
Yeah.
Lon Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman. You get to see Glenn Strange as the monster. And I mean, just seeing Lugosi again as Count Dracula is worth it, and it's just fun. It's fun. It's a fun movie.
I am Dracula. Listen to me.
I know I've seen that at some point when I was younger, but I haven't seen it in years. I don't have any copies, and as far as I don't know if they're streaming anywhere. I know a lot of.
I got that DVD on Amazon for $10. It had meets Frankenstein, meets Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, meets the Mummy, and meets
Invisible Man.
Invisible Man. Yeah, they're funny. Like, there's one scene I was watching right before I came on where Lon Chaney, Larry Talbot's staying in the hotel room, and Lou goes in, and he doesn't realize that he's turned into the Wolfman. He doesn't see him. He's like, he steals an apple from him from his hotel room, and he walks out and he's thinking about the Wolfman's coming up behind him to attack him, and he closes the door and locks it on him. And he goes, maybe I should take it back. Maybe he counted his apples. You get caught, and you think he's going to go back in. The Wolfman's on the other side of the door waiting for him, and they're like, nah, I won't do it. And it's like this whole tension where you go in, where you not, and then he comes back, and the next morning him and Bud Abbott go over and check on him, and the whole room is tore up, and Larry's like laying there, go, oh, he must have went on a bender last night. He thinks he's drunk and crashed his room. He's all like, I don't know what happened. Larry's all disheveled and everything. But they're fun.
Yeah, I'd like to watch them at some point. I just I forgot we had more to do. It's been a long October for me.
7 movies to watch in a week.
Well, not just that. I mean, between
everything else we watch.
There's 3 creature movies. The 3 Dracula movies. That's 13 right there. And then how many was it? 5 Mummy movies. That's 18 movies. Plus we talked about Halloween Ends, and then next week we're talking about the Invisible Man series, which I know most of it will be this guy here.
There's about 5 of those or 6.
Yeah. The Invisible Man shooting laser beams out of his eyes.
James Whale again.
Yes, James Whale. And then Seth has a ranking, I believe, of the series up on the horrorsyndicate.com. Was that your first article?
Yeah.
I was going to say, I feel like it's your first.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, next week we're doing that. The Invisible Man, and then following that, I'm not sure exactly what we're doing. I know we have something on the schedule.
Shit!
I don't know if it's shit.
No.
What?
I may have a birthday party to attend next week, so I may not be available.
Okay. No big deal. You make the next one.
I would think of you guys.
I have that thing, that thing. But anyway, yeah.
Watch movies anyway.
The first Invincible Man is one of my favorite of all time. I probably would put it in my top 4 of the Universal horror films.
You want to hold off on it?
No, I mean, if you guys want to go ahead, it's fine. It's my fiance's brother's birthday, so I mean, don't have to stop the wheel.
I like how you keep getting close to the screen. It's my fiance's birthday. You know, to stop the wheel. Okay. Anyway, real quick, final thoughts, Nate, on the Frankenstein films.
They're my favorites. The first 2 are my favorite Universal. As far as the monster movies go, all 4 James Whale movies are my favorites. I don't think anything's better than those.
One of these days we'll do an episode, a proper episode on the Old Dark House.
Yes,
we have to, and I would like to toss in the Hammer Old Dark House from '63 also when we do that episode, because I just got that from my.
Did Hammer do that? I know William Castle directed it, right?
Yeah, Castle directed it. It's in my Hammer box set that I just got.
Oh, okay. I didn't know they did that.
Yeah.
I couldn't
So,
finish that one because I love the first one so much, and it's a little.
Weirdly different.
I get it.
I couldn't get into it.
Now I'm going to make you watch it.
Okay, I'll watch it if it's out there.
Yeah.
I'd rather do Low Dark House than like House on Haunted Hill or something. Yeah,
ooh,
I got that
that's
one.
a good idea, actually, because we haven't talked about House on Haunted Hill, have we?
We do Vincent Price movies.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff we still can get to.
Peter Lorre movies.
We haven't talked about The Fly either, have we? I mean,
No.
Man, there is a lot of stuff we could still get to. I love The Fly and even Return. But anyway, I'm sorry I cut you off. What else were you gonna say?
No, that's it. I love the monster and Frankenstein, and I love the story. It's my preferred over Dracula or any of them. I mean, I do like the Wolfman. So my top 5 would be Wolfman and the 4 James Whale movies.
Okay. I'll give you I'm gonna have my list sent to you guys privately. I would like to do an episode of ranking like the top 20 Universal horror movies if we can do that at some point, because I think that would be a fun episode for us to do. Well, for me anyway. But Jared, will you some final thoughts on the Frankenstein series?
First 3 are really good.
Good.
Then I actually had a chance to watch Sun and Ghost after that, or I guess that would be. I watched the first 5. 4?
Ghost is the 4th one.
Okay, so yeah, I did watch the 5. The 5. Okay. So we all know the first 2 are instantaneous classics, just going down the chute. Like, if you have your horror library card, you know that those first 2 are definitely like classics.
Mm-hmm.
Going into the next 3, like I've only seen those ones like twice, but seeing that 3rd one was really refreshing because, like you were saying, Basil Rathbone is like completely takes over that movie with Bela Lugosi. I guess compared to like the Dracula franchise and the Wolfman franchise, I guess I would have to rank them higher than those just because I'm not too big on the other ones. Like, sure, I love the original Dracula. Son of Dracula is not my shit. Sorry, Ray. Love Wolfman, though.
We need to do Nosferatu.
Yes.
Fine.
I did mean to ask. I know Nate's running out of time. I did mean to ask. So does Bela Lugosi, is he the worst Frankenstein's monster?
I say Lon Chaney Jr. I don't know, maybe.
Maybe
Bela.
Think about that. Lugosi wasn't great.
No.
I just mean how he like lumbered around, like trying to point, stick his fingers.
That was a direction, and they were trying to go off what happened in the last movie. I don't know. That's a good question. Seth, what about you? Last final thoughts. Then I'm gonna go take a poop.
I think I agree with you guys that this is this Universal series of Frankenstein movies is probably has the most quality out of all the different franchises that they have. They're a lot more consistent. Like a lot of them are just like Invisible Man. They're just individual single servant stories. They're not connected or or even Dracula.
So good in that
all
one.
that. But the first 3 are excellent movies. The 4th one I think is really good. And I, of course, love Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman for obvious reasons. It's just a really strong series. I actually go to these ones a lot. Yeah. That's it. Back to you.
Sorry, I just found out I do get to go to work tomorrow. This is weird because I actually like my job for the most part. I like these movies. The first 3 especially. The Bride of Frankenstein is a masterclass in my opinion for the back then. James Whale is definitely the best director of all the Universal directors between the Frankenstein movies, The Old Dark House, such a good director, and unfortunately, well, I mean, the set design would have been different, but he unfortunately didn't come back for Son of Frankenstein, which would have been really cool to wrap up the trilogy with all 3 movies with him, that trilogy. But anyway, I love these movies. I love Universal movies overall, and I'm glad we got to talk about all of these for the most part. But yeah, they do get really muddled for me towards the end of the line. But next week we've got Invisible Man talk. That sounded weird. Invisible Man talk. I just rewatched the 2020 Invisible Man again a couple days ago. Man, that is a good movie. I don't know if I know Seth has seen it. Jared, I didn't know if you did, or Nate if you have. But damn good movie. Elizabeth Moss is a fucking tour de force in that movie.
Last pre-COVID movie watch experience.
That was the last movie I saw before. Yeah. I went on a Friday right before the shutdown. What's that, Jared?
You guys all give it a thumbs up? I actually haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great.
Oh, Jared, check it out, dude. It's good. Yeah.
Really good, modern take on the Invisible Man. I liked it a lot. And again, Elizabeth Moss was really good in that one. But she's good in everything. So, anywho, that's our show for the night. We'll be back next Wednesday, post October Blues, of course, and then we'll have a few more shows after that before we get to our top whatever of the 2022, which is the show I'm really looking forward to because I've seen 36 fucking movies this year. So, anyway, you guys have a great night. Nate,
I think I'm at 12.
Pretorius, Jared, have a great night. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Good night.
Good night. Bye, Nate. Bye, Nate. Nate's gone.